Hello, and welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wonder. Today I am here to do the Namestack challenge. So I have seen the Namestack challenge floating around Bookstagram, and I thought it would be fun to also make a video sharing my responses. So I have my Namestack here. My name is Chelsea, so I have Chelsa, and I discovered how few books I have in my collection that start with E when I was working on this challenge. So I will just go through each book letter by letter and share a little bit about each one. So for C, I have Clara, Callan by Richard B. Wright, and he is a Canadian author, and you can see this book did win a number of prestigious Canadian awards when it came out. It won the Giller Prize in 2001, and it also won the Canadian Governor-General's Literary Award. So it definitely comes with some rave reviews. I'll read the flap. It's the late 1930s, and two sisters, Clara and Nora Callan, face the future with both hope and uncertainty. Clara, a 30-ish schoolteacher who lives in small-town Ontario, longs for love and adventure. Nora, her flighty and very pretty younger sister, escapes to the excitement of New York, where she lands a starring role in a radio soap and becomes a minor celebrity. In a world of depression and at a time when war clouds are gathering, the sisters struggle within the web of social expectations for young women. Clara and Nora, sisters so different yet so inextricably linked, face the future in their own ways, discovering the joys of love, the price of infidelity, and the capacity for sorrow lurking beneath the surface of everyday experience. A brilliantly realized, deeply moving novel, Clara Callan is a masterpiece of fiction. So this is actually one on my shelves that I haven't read yet, but I think I will really enjoy it when I do get to it because it has that historical setting which I love, as well as the family linkages running throughout the story. So that is my pick for C, Clara Callan by Richard B. Wright. Then for H, I have Home from the Vinyl Cafe by Stuart McLean, and that is book 2 in my collection of Vinyl Cafe books. The Vinyl Cafe, for those of you who aren't Canadian and don't know, is a famous Canadian radio show that was broadcast on CBC for many, many years. And the radio show was a mix of different Canadian musical artists, and each week he would also tell a story about this little family living in the suburbs of Toronto, the parents Dave and Morley, with Dave owning a record shop, and then the children Stephanie and Sam, who started out as small children, and then as the years went on, the children grew up along with the show. So then, because the show became so popular, he did end up collecting the stories into short story collections as well. So this one has a number of stories separated out by seasons. We have some winter stories, spring stories, summer stories, autumn stories. It's got some of my all-time favorites. Dave Cooks a Turkey, which is a Christmas story that was a staple. We had it on CD growing up, and like every Christmas time we would listen to the Dave Cooks a Turkey story. So these are some classic short stories that I love. I absolutely love reading the Vinyl Cafe stories. To me, they're a major comfort read. When I read them, I can hear it in Stuart's voice, and they're just really funny, sweet little family stories. I'll read the back of this one. What's the best way to babysit a batch of sourdough bread? Welcome to the quirky world of the Vinyl Cafe. For Dave, Morley, Stephanie, and Sam, the year begins and ends with another Christmas debacle. In between, we get the scoop on Dave and Morley's first meeting, on ice, and Stephanie's early adventures in love. Then there are Dave and Morley's misguided but always heartfelt efforts at parenting, whether it's throwing a zombie-centered birthday party, putting up the Christmas lights, or losing control at the grocery store. In the hands of master storyteller Stuart McLean, ordinary errands and events are revealed in all their challenging and hilarious possibilities. So if you're looking for funny, cozy family short stories, I would highly recommend the Vinyl Cafe series, and that is my pick for H, Home from the Vinyl Cafe by Stuart McLean. Then, like I said, E was a bit of a challenge, and I have 2 E's in my name, so that didn't help. For the first E, I have Everything and the Moon by Julia Quinn. This is one of her books that I haven't read. Julia Quinn is the romance author who wrote the Bridgerton series that is blowing up in fame because of the TV series. But this is, I believe, one of her standalone. It's definitely not part of the Bridgerton series, but I think it's one of her standalone novels. And I really love the cover with the estate house and the white roses. This one, it says, 7 years ago she broke his heart. When Robert Kemble stumbles across Victoria Linden in a hedgerow maze, he can't believe his eyes. The girl who'd torn him in two, who let him plan an elopement and then left him standing by the edge of the road, was suddenly within arm's reach, and even though his fury still knows no bounds, she was impossible to resist. 7 years ago, he left her all but ruined. Victoria's father had told her an earl would never marry a vicar's daughter, and he was right. Robert had promised her marriage, then danced off to London while she suffered the shame of a foiled elopement. But even though Victoria doesn't particularly enjoy her new life as a governess, when Robert offers her a job of a different sort, his mistress, she refuses, unable to sacrifice her honor even for him. But Robert won't take no for an answer, and he vows to make her his through any means possible. Can these star-crossed lovers learn to trust again, and is love really sweeter the second time around? So that's the premise of this book. Like I said, it's not one that I've read yet, but I saw it for 25 cents at my secondhand bookstore, and I thought, why not add another little fun Regency romance to my collection? So that's my pick for E, Everything on the Moon by Julia Quinn. Then we're on a bit of a Regency trend, and my pick for Elle is Longbourn by Jo Baker. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling told from the point of view of the servants in the book, so it pretty much follows from the beginning to the end the events of Pride and Prejudice, but it's told from a very different perspective, so it doesn't feel like you're just rehashing the same events. Rather, the servants have their own lives and challenges and romance and difficulties happening below the stairs concurrently to the events of Pride and Prejudice. So I'll read the blurb for this one. Pride and Prejudice was only half the story. If Elizabeth Bennet had the washing of her own petticoats, Sarah often thought, she'd most likely be a sight more careful with them. In this irresistibly imagined below-stairs answers to Pride and Prejudice, the servants take center stage. Sarah, the orphaned housemaid, spends her day scrubbing the laundry, polishing the floors, and emptying the chamber pots for the Bennet household. But there is just as much romance, heartbreak, and intrigue downstairs at Longbourn as there is upstairs. When a mysterious new footman arrives, the orderly realm of the servants' hall threatens to be completely, perhaps irrevocably, upended. Jo Baker dares to take us beyond the drawing rooms of Jane Austen's classic, into the often overlooked domain of the stern housekeeper and the starry-eyed kitchen maid, into the gritty daily particulars faced by the lower classes in Regency England during the Napoleonic Wars, and in doing so creates a vivid, fascinating, fully realized world that is wholly her own. So I read this one 2 years ago, I think, for Jane Austen July, and I did really enjoy it. It definitely illuminated how Jane Austen's books really are focusing on the stories of the upper classes and some of the different challenges that the servants in the families and the lower class citizens at the time would have been facing that aren't explored in Jane Austen's novels. When I was watching the most recent adaptation of Emma, the 2020 version, I really did notice how much the servants were present throughout that film, and it kept bringing me back to thoughts of Longbourn. So that is my pick for Elle, Longbourn by Jo Baker. Then for S, I have Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison, and the blurb for this says, Song of Solomon explores the quest for cultural identity. Based on the African-American folktale about enslaved Africans who escaped slavery by flying back to Africa, it tells the story of Macon Milkman Dead, a young man alienated from himself and estranged from his family, his community, and his historical and cultural roots. Milkman is mentally enslaved and spiritually dead, but with the help of his eccentric aunt, Pilat, and his best friend, Guitar Baines, he embarks on a physical and spiritual journey that enables him to reconnect with his past and realize his self-worth. Apparently this book covers almost the entire lifespan of this individual, starting from his childhood, and covers like 30 or 40 years of his story. So I think it is one that I would get really invested into the characters in, and I've actually never read anything by Toni Morrison, and I really do mean to get to some of her work soon. So that is my pick for S, Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. Then I have another E, and for that one, literally the only other book that started with E on my shelf that wasn't the E, but actually the first letter of the title was E, is Emma by Jane Austen. So I have a bit of a Regency trend here in my Namestack. Emma probably needs no introduction. It is one of Jane Austen's 6 novels and follows Emma Woodhouse, who is an upper class young woman who is living with her father. Her mother had passed away when she was quite young, and her sister is significantly older than her, so she pretty much is running the household now that her father is older. And one of the things that she loves to do is try to matchmake the people in her community. So this follows her exploits as she tries and fails to set up some matches and may or may not fall in love herself. So that is my pick for my other E, Emma by Jane Austen. And then lastly for A, we have And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. And this book I had actually bought as soon as it came out in 2012, and it looks like from this bookmark that I got about 50 pages in, this was in the middle of my bachelor's degree, and I often didn't have the time I wanted to dedicate to reading. Khaled Hosseini was one of my favorite authors in high school. I read The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns when I was in like grade 11 or 12 and really enjoyed them. And I remember that And the Mountains Echoed was one of the first books that I added to my to-read shelf on Goodreads when I opened my Goodreads account. And then I've never actually gotten around to picking it back up now that I have more free time and I'm reading again, now that I'm a few years out of school. So, And the Mountains Echo, I'll read the blurb. An emotional, provocative, and unforgettable novel about how we love, how we take care of one another, and how the choices we make resonate through generations. Broad in scope and setting, wise and compassionate in its storytelling, And the Mountains Echoed is a profoundly moving and captivating novel that demonstrates Khaled Hosseini's deeply felt understanding of the bonds that define us and shape our lives, and of what it means to be human. It begins with the heartbreaking, unparalleled bond between the two motherless siblings in an Afghan village. To 3-year-old Pari, her big brother Abdullah is more mother than brother. To 10-year-old Abdullah, little Pari is his everything. What happens to them, and the large and small manners in which it echoes through the lives of so many other people, is proof of the moral complexity of life. In a multi-generational novel revolving not just around parents and children, but also brothers and sisters, cousins and caretakers, Hosseini explores the many ways in which family members love, wound, betray, honor, and sacrifice for one another, and how often we are surprised by the actions of those closest to us at the times that matter most. Following its characters and the ramifications of their lives and choices and loves around the globe, from Kabul to Paris to San Francisco to the Greek island of Tinos, the story expands gradually outward, becoming more emotionally complex and powerful with each turning page. So, it sounds like I would absolutely love it. I don't know why I haven't picked it up again, but I definitely do want to get to it soon because I did think that his writing was absolutely beautiful in his first 2 books that I read. So I'm sure that I'm going to love this, and it has that key buzzword that I love, multi-generational. So I definitely do want to read this soon. And that is my choice for A, And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. So that is my version of the Namestack challenge. I had a lot of fun pulling the different books off my shelves that match the letters of my name, and it was an interesting mix of books that I have read and loved, and some of the unread books on my shelves that I hope to get to someday soon. Until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book.